Hello and welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about why it is that some children don't get phonics and what the brain can teach us about it. When I hear a child read aloud and they skip over the final letter of each word, I know that this is not carelessness, but a sign that their sound processing isn't really supporting their decoding. They're used to overcompensating for weak phonemic awareness, and they skim past words as they try to gather the gist of a storyline. They're filling in the gaps with their own imagined ideas, and they may even be encouraged to do so by a well-meaning parent who wants to tell their child that they're obviously very creative. The teaching of phonics at the child's school might also be strong. So what's gone wrong? Children do learn in different ways because they have had different exposure to language in early life. Since the explicit and systematic teaching of phonics was first introduced into the teaching of early reading, children have benefited from a universal level of access to the smallest sounds of language. This step was necessary as too many children lacked basic knowledge of letters and sounds, in other words, the way that phonemes and graphemes correspond. When I work with children now, I know that they have been taught phonics and that any gaps are more likely to be due to weakness at the perceptual level. Even though we can draw this distinction between knowledge of phonemes and sensitivity to the smallest sounds of language, we also know that phonics teaching is necessary, but it is not sufficient, particularly for some children. Now, this is because children learn to read by bolting their decoding skills onto the language processing system that they developed in their preschool years, and we need to acknowledge the complexity that this brings. Researchers have uncovered differences in language development in infancy, and that these impact reading attainment many years later. Children from language-impoverished backgrounds arrive at school with measurably different phonemic awareness. Hart and Risley's landmark finding that by age 5 some children have heard 32 million fewer words than their more affluent classmates is well known. Less discussed is what this means at the level of the brain's ability to detect speech in a noisy environment. Researchers have shown that children's ability to detect the sounds of language correlates directly with their auditory working memory and their attention. Children who struggle to filter the speech signal from the noise around it are working harder to process every sentence in every lesson every day. This is not a knowledge gap, it's a perceptual one. The encouraging finding is that this can change. Studies have shown that after 2 years of musical training, children from disadvantaged backgrounds perform significantly better on speech and noise perception. The auditory brainstem, it turns out, goes on adapting throughout childhood. And the question for schools is whether we can achieve something similar, not necessarily through years of instrumental tuition, but through targeted rhythm-based support. The phonics classroom environment uses rhyme and rhythm. And many books have been written to support rhyme detection, and the predictive element of rhythm and rhyme strengthens early reading development. Indeed, reciting rhythms and singing together are wonderful activities for children of all ages. For teachers, these activities shine a vibrant light on children's rhythmic awareness. Those interested in noticing learning differences see that some over-anticipate actions or words or both, and some are always behind the group. The way that children perform and participate in these exercises can help us see those with language processing differences who are compensating, trying to cope, or lagging behind. This is particularly obvious in December, when many schools post clips of children in performance, and it's clear that although the children are trying to stay together, many do not. This moment of observed synchrony is where we notice how social, contextual, and language cues intersect. The work of remediating these learning differences is delicate, but vital for children who learn differently. Using rhythm as an intervention to support these children requires precision in a small group context, where synchrony, belonging, and mattering can be emphasized. Rhythm-based training strengthens the brain's sound processing systems, supporting children who don't respond to traditional phonics teaching. Using a rhythm-based approach to tune into what matters and tune out the noise, we can help children build inhibitory control and discernment of salience. They already possess context more than other children, but it's possible that rhythmic precision builds the necessary inhibitory control to support perception of sensory signals at the level of phonemic detail. A rhythm-based approach differs from musical training in the sense that there are no instruments, there's no singing, there's no complicated mnemonics, and no practicing at home. In this way, a rhythm-based approach removes economic and social disadvantage and minimizes differences in home background. The active ingredients are reading simple notation with fluency from the first session, rhythm-based actions, and team working. And we place the emphasis on fluency, ease, synchrony, belonging, and mattering. Many of the children taking part have learned while at school to see themselves as different, and they really benefit from the experience of absolute synchrony in a small group. The experience of belonging and the emphasis on being the same whilst working as a team is an aspect that these children really enjoy. When Jane first joined my group, she was in year 3 and she wanted to talk about her birthday rather than read to me. Smiling, she held my gaze as she told me about the plans for her party. And as I gently moved her attention to the passage I hoped she'd read, her face became pale and her voice quietened. She guessed most words. She conflated groups of words such as of, for, and from, connectives, through, though, thought. And she also omitted suffixes such as s, ed, and ing. It was clear that she knew how to attack words and which graphemes and phonemes corresponded, but her reading development definitely needed a boost. After 10 weeks of rhythm-based exercises, I heard her read once again. She sat and she began to read to me straight away. I noticed that the suffixes were no longer missing and the connectives were no longer muddled. There was a strong feeling of forward direction in her reading, and each word flowed naturally into the next. Her voice rose and fell, mirroring the shape of each phrase, clause, and sentence. Best of all, instead of guessing a word that was unfamiliar, she inferred it from contextual cues. Her reading was faster on easier passages of text, but slower on the more challenging levels that she was now able to read. Jane was delighted that she could now read words like suspicious and evidently, and she said she now knew what was going on in class. Her teacher had noticed that Jane was able to take part in discussions in the classroom about texts and characters, and also her teacher had noticed an unexpectedly strong gain in fluency, positive attitude to reading, and in her ability to tackle tricky words. Now, Michelle was in year 7 when she first read to me. She was able to read words such as circus, but she struggled with the less familiar words such as wounded. She would read each passage really slowly, quietly, and steadily, mispronouncing words with silent letters such as night, and conflating no, new, and now. And as she read, I could tell that she had practiced reading diligently. After the 10-week rhythm-based program, she read to me with energy and expressive interest in her voice. And she said this: "I'm reading in lessons. It's completely changed." She had made 30 months of progress in reading comprehension and was able to read passages fluently and with natural expression. Before the program, she had always dreaded reading aloud in front of others in the classroom. And the head teacher of her school said, "The students have really engaged with the activities. It makes learning fun as well as having a profoundly positive effect on their reading skills." Jane and Michelle are not unusual. In every school, there are children whose auditory processing has shaped the way that they read and the way that they see themselves as readers. They do not lack effort. They do not lack good teaching, but they are waiting for the right kind of support to reach them. If you recognise these children in your school, I've written a short guide that explains the connection between rhythm and phonemic awareness and what it means in practice. You can read more on my website. Thank you so much for watching this to the end. Bye for now.